Welcome back to Propaganda by the Seed. It's early November. We're getting a nice rainy day here, so I'm taking a little time to catch up on some podcast stuff. The world, unfortunately, still on fire. Fascism continues to escalate at a pretty rapid pace here in the U.S. Genocides still unfolding in Palestine and Sudan, and shit's fucked up. And we can't look away from these issues, and we should be doing everything we can to make the world a better place. It seems like some of the biggest movement things that are happening nationally here are mutual aid networks continuing to ramp up, especially in the face of people not getting SNAP benefits, although that's maybe going to get resolved sometime soon. And ICE Watch and Rapid Response networks continuing to build and come online. So those are great things to get involved with, and a million other things. Whatever you're good at, there's some way to try and leverage your skill set, your energy, and your passion in towards building a better world for everyone. But also, with the world being so fucking bleak and so many terrible things happening constantly, it is nice to take a little break sometimes and learn about new plant. I know that is something that soothes my frazzled nerves. So hopefully this will help with your nerves and whatever else you're dealing with. So this week's episode is an interview with Bob Boers about Haskaps. And before we get into that, let's hear from our friends at the Channel Zero Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to The Child and Its Enemies, a podcast about queer and neurodivergent kids living out anarchy and youth liberation. Here at The Child and Its Enemies, we believe that youth autonomy is not only crucial to queer and trans liberation, but to anarchy itself. Governance is inherently based on projecting linear narratives of time and development and gender onto our necessarily asynchronous and atemporal queer lives. And youth and teens are at the center of this form of oppression. Our goal with the podcast is to create a space by and for youth that challenges all forms of control and inspires us to create queer, feral, ageless networks of care. I'm your host, MK Zariel. I'm 15 years old, and I'm the youth correspondent at the Anarchist Review of Books, author of Debate Me Bro, and organizer of some all-ages queer spaces in my city and online. If you want to learn more or join us on Discord and Signal, our website is thechildanitsenemies.noblogs.org.
Bob Boers, welcome to Propaganda by the Seed. And if you could start off by giving us a little information about your work with Haskaps and how you came to be doing that work.
Okay, well, when I came to the university in 1999, there were 4 varieties already planted, and it was kind of interesting that they ripened so early. But one of the varieties bloomed much later, and I decided to hybridize those, the better one of the other 3, and the one that bloomed late, and started doing, raise some seedlings from that. And they seem to be really exciting, with the progeny of the early and the late ones breeding together. And I went to a conference, met a breeder, Maxine Thompson, and we got discussing things like that, and I started really getting into growing Haskap and breeding it after, especially seeing the results uh, look kind of favorable.
Cool. And what was your background when you started this Haskap project?
Well, been, I grew up outside of Beltsville, Maryland, and twice in high school, I worked at the USDA in research, and then I got a horticulture degree, undergraduate degree there at University of Maryland. Became a technician for a few years, then went to graduate school at Guelph, where my emphasis was on working with different strawberry species and making hybrids.
Cool.
And then, yeah, then I landed a job at the University of Saskatchewan. I think they just wanted somebody who would teach classes like the propagation class, the greenhouse class, and stuff like that. And they didn't really care what I did, but I think I should say they did care what I would do, but they weren't telling me what to do research wise. They were
Yeah.
just telling me to do teaching wise.
So you had
So that gave
some latitude to play with.
Yeah, so that gave me a lot of latitude to even work on Haskap. Because if I the prairies, is all grain in the plant sciences department. So for me to choose to work on obscure fruit, nobody cared if I did that or not.
Nice.
Other areas, I'd probably be forced to be a raspberry breeder or strawberry breeder or something like that.
Cool. Well, I'm glad that you got to do that project. Um, I guess we'll circle back to kind of the beginning, and if you could give a description of what Haskaps are and where they come from as a species.
Okay. Well, their species is Lonicera cerulea, and it's a member of the honeysuckle family. But hardly any of the honeysuckle species are edible. But this one has like deep blue berries, and it's all across the globe in the northern hemisphere. Usually the boreal forest, but there's a few places like mountaintops and swamps and stuff that it can be found in. So it's native to Canada, but the Canadian version of the plant has very small berries, whereas some of them in Russia and Japan have much larger fruit. So that's where a lot of the cultivar stuff comes from. Um, but there's different subspecies. Like there's one that grows really tall, and like it wants to be like 9 feet tall, and it tastes like tonic water.
Huh,
And then
interesting.
there's some that crawl around on the ground at the St. Lawrence Seaway, never getting more than a foot tall. Uh,
Wild.
yeah, and the ones that taste disgusting are probably co-evolved with birds because the disgusting ones, birds don't have much of a taste buds, right?
Yeah.
Uh, like I read somewhere some birds only have 24 taste buds, whereas we have hundreds and hundreds of them.
Hmm.
They can't taste the disgusting berries, but the disgusting berries are actually loaded with healthy compounds for them. So, so it's like not I'm too young for, but my grandparents talked about bitters.
Yeah.
Like that was bitters. Well, some of the wild haskap is bitter, extremely good for you, but if you could stand to eat it.
Interesting. So these different subspecies with very different fruit properties probably shaped by their like seed dispersal partner, you think?
Yeah, well, they have a special ecosystem usually. Usually it's on the edge of wetlands
Okay.
because they have a narrow roots or shallow root system. that when as soon as the wetland dries up a little bit, the roots can start breathing better.
Yeah.
But it also but it also means they have lots of antioxidants to combat oxygen depletion
Hmm.
and, and also high UV light because they're farther northern. So they're rather healthy for you,
Yeah.
but some are a lot more edible than others.
Yeah. Um, so we've got this sort of what is that? Circumboreal distribution, and the wild ones around here used to be Linicera caerulea subspecies villosa.
Yeah.
Um, and now the most recent sources I'm seeing breaks that off into its own species. And I'm curious um what you think of that, if that's kind of all these subspecies are going to turn into their own species, or is that kind of one of those judgment call um based on like
Well,
who's doing the taxonomy.
it used to be just called Linicera villosa. Then it became subspecies. I wasn't,
Oh, so I've got it backwards.
yeah, maybe. But the other thing is the version that we have in North America, so far I've only found uh, diploid versions, so two sets of chromosomes. But the ones that we grow commercially around the world, Japanese and Russian type stuff, has four sets of chromosomes.
Hmm.
So maybe you've got it right. I hadn't heard of somebody calling it the other way around there. But
Yeah, interesting.
yeah,
Yeah, it's also an interesting situation locally because the Linicera caerulea is on like the watch list of invasives, which doesn't make sense to me if a subspecies of that species is native. So
yeah, it's
I've got a bone to pick with the Department of Ag on that one.
yeah, and I when I gathered it across Canada, like I found it in 300 sites or more, and only two or three sites were there like more than dozens of plants.
Yeah,
Like I've never seen it take over anything. And usually if it's usually on the edge of a wetland, if you walk slightly up the hill, you never find it again.
yeah.
Unless you're in Newfoundland where it rains so much, you'll find it up on hills.
Hmm, interesting.
So I
Yeah,
don't, but
I've
there
never seen
are,
this plant in the wild, and I've
yeah,
been looking.
yeah, it's really small. And also the berries are only the size of lentils.
Yeah.
You know, it's not as if you've seen the commercial ones and are looking for that.
That's not what you're going to
Yours
find.
are only a foot or two tall with little tiny berries.
Interesting. And so the commercial cultivars tend to be tetraploid.
Yeah.
Is that from human breeding, or is there just populations in Japan and Russia that are naturally tetraploid?
Yeah, most of them are naturally tetraploid. Uh,
Interesting.
Japan, there was a study, they found diploid and tetraploids.
Yeah.
But in North America, well, we have had a collection of 1,500 wild ones, but some have died
Wow.
off. Maybe it's 1,300 or 1,200 now. But we, with a flow cytometer, we analyzed like 300 of them, and they were all diploid.
Yeah.
So maybe the diploid version came over here from there, from Asia or something.
Yeah. That could be. Um, I've heard Linicera caerulea called both Haskap and honeyberry. Are those just different common names, or is there something more specific about those different common names?
They're common names, but Haskap is the world's oldest name for it. That's what the native people to Japan who don't look, they look more like the Australian uh, people, natives. That's what they called it, although they didn't have a written language, but presumably for centuries they called it. That's the oldest name, and honeyberry is a recently created name about 20 years ago.
It's like a marketing term.
Yeah, and I hate that name because
Yeah.
first of all, it doesn't look like honey.
Yeah.
Honey,
I assume that's a reference to honeysuckle.
yeah, it's not honey color,
Yeah.
and it kind of erases the history.
Mm.
Although when I first chose Haskap, if you search honeyberry on the web 20 years ago, some hooker came up. So, and there's also a tropical plant called honeyberry. So I was not impressed. The same guy also renamed, instead of sea buckthorn, he calls them sea berries.
Yeah.
Well, that's stupid because they don't grow by the sea. And everyone should know that people went through great pain to pick it because of their thorns.
Yeah.
You know, like you should know you're paying extra because somebody damaged themselves picking that fruit. But yeah, I didn't like the renaming things like that.
Yeah, you
Honeyberry.
got a perfectly good word that just means this plant. Might as well stick with it.
Yeah, I also had taken I took a marketing class at a community college, and they said the sound of a K or a Z or kind of wake up consumers. And like a lot of cars have that, used to have
Huh.
that in it, like the Z180 or whatever, stuff like that. Um, yeah. So that sound was actually kind of marketable,
Yeah, interesting. I never thought about it that way.
except in Quebec. In Quebec, they call it Cameroons because they don't pronounce their H's. So that would be ASCAP. So,
Interesting.
so researchers that actually visited my Haskap Days workshop came up with the idea. They invented the name Cameroons, so they wouldn't have to do ASCAP.
Yeah, that's so funny. Those Quebecois guys, they always gotta do their own thing. Um, all right. So if someone wants to grow Haskaps, what are some of the basic growing conditions and cultivation needs for this plant?
Well, first thing is you have to have two compatible varieties to have fruit, right? Because if you only had one variety, it's not going to do anything.
Yep. Needs cross-pollination.
Yeah, and they they actually do okay at the university with a high pH, 7.8 to 9, but they do better when it's more acidic.
Okay.
But maybe we bred ours to be more adapted. Uh, so that's one thing. They bloom a month before the last frost, and the flowers survive. So uh, that's one good thing. You don't have to worry about planting them on the north side of something to delay bloom or anything like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, they do have a shallow root system that does not compete well with grasses.
Good to know.
Like, uh, like if you're planting them on a slope, you probably have to have a bit of grass or something. You can't do bare soil because you would get erosion, but maybe heavily mulch it or something
Yep.
would be a good idea. Um, it is a northern adapted plant, right? It's naturally found in zone 1 and 2. Uh,
Amazing.
but I met some guy last year uh, who is growing it in Virginia,
Huh.
which is way far south, but he's using heavy mulch of sawdust. And the breeder in Oregon, who's also fairly south, she also used sawdust. So I wonder if mulching, I'm talking like 6 inches of sawdust.
Wow.
I'm, I'm wondering if that is insulating the soil to stay cold during much of the growing season.
Interesting idea. Yeah.
Yeah, but I haven't proven it, but uh, those those two places are the most southern place I know of growing Haskap, although the Virginia guy had only been had his plants in the ground 2 years, so um, I'm waiting to see how he keeps doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Still, I would say experimental that far south, but interesting that it's having at least limited success so far.
Yeah, but he's also using like within the Haskap variation, there's ones that want to bloom really early and some late. So the guy growing in Virginia, he's growing the two varieties I said were the last to bloom, which was uh, Boreal Beauty and Boreal Beast. So, because if you were to plant the early varieties farther south, they would try to wake up in the middle of winter when it got, a week or two above freezing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so that's one of the challenges is choosing the varieties for your area.
And
But
compatible pollinizers would basically just be two genetically distinct individuals that have the same bloom period. Is there anything beyond that?
yeah, well, there's genetic compatibility too,
Okay.
but it's hardly studied. In my opinion, it's if you choose two different varieties that bloom at the same time or at least overlap, 90% chance it's going to work. But
Cool.
there's that 5% chance it might not, and you might need
You
a
might just
third.
randomly not get anything.
Yeah. Like if you were growing it commercially, you want to really be certain if you're only growing two varieties
Yeah.
that they work. But a gardener, well, you could say, oh, they're blooming and it's not working, get another one.
Yeah. Are there any
Hopefully, I was gonna say, hopefully you know what your variety is.
Yes. Gotta keep those records.
Yeah.
Are there any particular pest or disease issues?
Well, the varieties I bred that didn't have mildew,
Mm.
but that's the most common disease in Saskatchewan and probably the northern areas. They can get botrytis, which attaches mostly the leaves, not the fruit so much. But that's in wetter climates like Japan gets that. But they don't have that many insect pests. I've had thrips get on them, uh, but the thrips will stay in the flowers during bloom and then they come out and nibble on some of the developing leaves and make them look funny.
Yeah.
But but they haven't really affected that much of the plant.
Cool. Yeah, so it seems like they're pretty easy to grow overall. I have seen bird predation on them be dramatic.
Yeah,
Any idea why they love them so much? Like more than blueberries, more than elderberries. They
I
seem to
I
just clean
think
them out.
I think it's because they're the first fruit of the season.
Okay, so there's just nothing else around.
Yeah, you might have some day neutral strawberries
Yeah.
fruiting that were left over from the year before, but yeah, they're the first ones to bloom. So the birds really get after them. And so it's better to have netting.
Yeah.
Although I did see one farmer in northern Ontario, he had three-tier system not to use netting. And what he did was he had these kites that fly around that look like uh, some kind of hawk. And then he had speakers 15 feet off the ground that had sounds of predator birds
Wow.
screaming. And he actually researched that he went to an ornithologist who told him what species were in his area to mimic the sound. And then he also had one of these cannons. They have these cannons that run off propane. They don't really shoot anything into the ground out, but it sounds like a big blast.
Yeah.
And he said if all three, he was devastated his first year of a real harvest. Some blackbirds came in, and then he set up the system, and he had like hardly any birds. If
That's
all three, but
impressive.
if one of them, if the wind died down and his kites are on like tall poles, right? It's not like he's out there flying it. As soon as the wind picks up, they start moving around. But he said if one of the systems went down, then he'd see birds starting to come in. But
Interesting.
most people think if you need netting,
Yeah. Yeah,
but
that's pretty much been my experience is because they do tend to turn color before they're like fully ripe and very flavorful.
yeah,
And as soon as they turn blue, the birds want to eat them. And you'd really want to wait like a few more days or maybe even a week for them to like sweeten up and have more flavor. And if you want them to still be there when they're fully ripe, it seems like netting is basically required.
yeah. I get away with it in my backyard because my dogs have a dog door and they can go out and bark at them at the
Yes.
bird.
Dog dogs and cats are extremely helpful.
Yeah.
Um, we we have a decent amount of bird predation on our high bush blueberries, and I'm always trying to scheme up a way to protect them without um, doing netting because it's just such a pain in the butt. And my neighbor was like, "Oh, you know what I use is a 4 foot long inflatable snake."
Um,
Which I tried this year, and it was fairly effective. Not 100%, but just another fake predator that they're not used to seeing there seems to help.
I know one of our earliest Hascap days, um, I had maybe 20 people out there in the field, and the waxwings were only 2 rows over, not scared of us, eating the berry.
Yes, waxwings are the most voracious fruit eating birds I've ever seen.
Yeah, yeah.
So other than fresh eating, what do you like to do with the Haskaps once they are harvested?
Well, I made a big batch of Hascap liqueur this year.
Oh,
Just
interesting.
just I usually take the Hascap and freeze it first,
Hmm.
and I poured vodka on it and dumped in some sugar in a canning jar and let it sit there for they say for 2 months. And then I squished all the juice out of the berries, but kept the berries in the freezer and tastes good for liqueur. I've made ice cream with it, uh, pies, topping for stuff. Some people have made wine with it, but wine is such an art. You have to get the right yeast and stuff.
Yeah.
Uh, we had, I used to have a technician who was really into wine, and he got 10 different kinds of yeast. And using the same big batch of wine or juice, the flavors were completely different.
Oh,
And
interesting.
a couple of them made dry wines, a couple made sweet wines, and some were boring. But yeah, so you can make, yeah, it's a wine. you can make a wine closest to red wine of any of the fruit wines.
Huh. I would not have guessed that.
Yeah, uh, we fooled a bunch of professors from France who actually they came to see, they were tasting our wine that my technician made, and they didn't they assumed it was red wine from grapes.
Yeah.
But we kept once the translator got through their head that it was not from grapes, and they heard it was Lanister cerulean, they all broke out their notebooks and wrote down the genus and species name.
Hmm.
But but I must say those professors were soil scientists, not wine scientists.
Yeah, maybe a real
We've
wine
been really
snob
good
would
at
would
being
have
fooled those.
sniffed it out.
Yeah, but yeah, so they were impressed. But I think you get some people are not successful making wine because they don't. There's a lot of developing the techniques, and no one lets you know what yeast they're using.
Ah, yeah. Would you care to disclose what the appropriate yeast for Haskap wine is?
I don't remember it. I think it.
So m more experimentation needed.
Well, I went to there's this northern wine conference called Vita North, and it's everyone who shouldn't be growing grapes goes to that. And I brought some Haskap jam, and I just the guy selling yeast had a notebook of some like 200 or 300 strains of yeast, and I had him taste our jam and had him recommend 10 yeast for us to get.
Wow.
So, and one of those was a nice dessert wine,
Huh. Cool.
but I don't remember it that much. But it was actually my technician's thing. But I could probably look it up
Yeah.
somewhere.
Well, if someone gets after me after this podcast is released and it's like, I really want to try that Haskap wine, I'll send them your way. If people are interested in doing some like small scale or farm scale breeding work with Haskaps, do you have any tips for doing that? And do you think it's a species that could potentially respond well to small scale breeding?
Well, first of all, I should say I did really large scale breeding. Like every year, I grew 5 to 10,000, planted 5 to 10,000 seeds.
Wow.
And then I had a, I could just describe what I did, but first of all, I would know the parents. And I'd say
Definitely.
this parent has certain characteristics. Like, for example, to overgeneralize, some of the Japanese Haskap have fat berries and they're sweet, but maybe they're boring and they ripen unevenly. But the Russian varieties tend to have long, skinny berries. They ripen evenly. They have a lot of flavor, but they don't have much sugar. And the berries tend to fall off really fast. So when I hybridized Russian and Japanese together, uh, I instead of having long, skinny one like the one or short fat, I had long fat berries, right? So, and it was able to sort through. But yeah, we really worked hard. I think we've raised uh, maybe 250,000 seedlings to come up with our 9 varieties, of which really only the first 4 varieties released was from the first trial, just to get them out there to try stuff.
Yeah.
So really 250,000 plants resulted in 5 or 6 varieties.
Wow.
So,
That's an impressive effort.
yeah, and but anyway, I would raise the seedlings, And then those that grow slower in the original plug tray, I throw them all away. And
Hmm.
then maybe 2 to 3,000 get larger pots. They're about like we use 1.5 liter pots. Those will fruit within a year or two.
Okay,
Now,
cool.
maybe, or for me, they fruit for a year or two.
Yeah.
Maybe because I've been doing several cycles of breeding and they're going faster and faster. So a year or two later, they have fruit on them, and I look at it now, and do the fruit look puny or large? Do the plants look healthy or not? So I'll take the 2,000 to 3,000 in the pots and maybe save 400 and plant those in the field. And then I have to wait a few years for them to get full grown to see how they are. So, uh, yeah, so I've only done large scale, really working hard to make things better than before. Um, but yeah, I think if the average person crosses two varieties they like, they're going to get a lot of lousy things, but a very small percentage uh, might be similar or better than the parents.
So basically, many of the chance seedlings are not going to have favorable properties, even if you have two parents that you like a lot.
Yeah,
Only a small percentage of those shuffled genes will result in something that's really desirable.
yeah, and I had a list of like 25 traits that I was looking at when I was evaluating. Like there's something like 100 varieties from Russia,
Hmm.
which only a handful have gotten here to North America. And I evaluated them for 3 years with all these checklists. But so many times there's all it takes is one characteristic to be bad, and then it's not worthy being a fruit of variety.
Yeah.
Now they got to taste good. Taste good is maybe 10%, or taste really good might be 10%. Productive might be only 10%. Well, now if you want to taste good and productive, 1 out of 100. But if you want a taller bush, you know, it keeps getting exponentially harder and harder to find something better.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mentioned that one subspecies early. It's called Stenantha that grows really fast, but is
Hmm.
disgusting. Like the bushes they're twice as tall as the regular breeding lines, but they're also twice as wide. So that makes them maybe 4 times bigger or something. Or is it eight? 2 times 2 times 2. I guess 8 times bigger
Yeah.
per bush. And I've been breeding them a couple of generations. And a couple of years ago, we found uh, fast growing ones with big berries that had practically no flavor.
Oh, so close.
but they, but they were no longer disgusting.
That's a
I
good
mean,
start.
the disgusting ones taste like concentrated tonic water. If you eat one of those, your mouth will have that disgusting taste for like half an hour in your mouth. But
Interesting.
but those birds will live forever that are eating.
They're really taking their bitters.
Yeah. So we really have crossed those two bushes that were fast growing with all the better tasting stuff. So
Yeah. Is the trait that you're looking for fast growing or larger form? Like, do you want it to get to the normal size faster, or are you looking for a larger shrub?
yeah, a lot of the varieties out there now or in the recent past only get to be about 4 feet tall.
Yeah.
Machines, the machines that pick berries easily take 6 to 7 foot bushes.
Ah, yeah. So you'd
So
get a
that
lot more
means,
productivity per
yeah,
acre if you could maximize height within reason, like what can still be machined.
yeah. And actually, the machines usually have a 6 foot opening, but the branches can bend back an extra foot or two
Yeah.
and go in sort of diagonally in there. Um, but it's also like that's a whole set of traits to evaluate. You want some varieties from Russia, most varieties from Russia, you just touch the bushes and the berries fall off. Well, that's not good for a machine for a commercial guy because a heavy wind will knock all the fruit off.
Yeah.
But there are variations of the plant that are so tough to get the fruit off, you'd have to tear it off.
Mm.
You don't want it holding on that strong. So you really want something in between uh, in between those two extremes.
Yeah.
And that the wind isn't, you'd have to have a really bad wind to knock off everything, like a hurricane or something.
Yeah. So it's another sort of necessary trait to find if you want a commercial variety, along with, you know, the right height and the good flavor and productivity. And you're really
Yeah.
cutting into the
The other
percentages here.
the other big trait, I was calling it crunch. Some of the berries, you can actually feel it in your mouth that you're breaking the skin.
Huh.
But most of the varieties prior to our program don't have that trait at all. They're like eating butter or something.
Yeah.
You
Very
don't really,
soft.
they're very soft. And I thought crunch meant it wasn't ripe yet. But actually, 5 years ago when my wife passed away, I didn't go out in the field at all harvest season. Uh, but I started going out in August, which is way past due, and I found half shriveled berries that had what I was calling crunch.
Hmm.
So then I realized, well, no, that's not lateness, that's just skin quality. And
Yeah.
so I
Interesting.
started, but I had already been breeding them to make them later and later. Like my varieties, well, the older varieties all ripened the last week in June in Saskatoon. But using the Japanese and some other germplasm, I got them to ripen first week, second, third, and fourth weeks in July.
Huh. Interesting.
And
That's a significant
nobody out,
change.
yeah, to have like for a farmer to have 5 months or 5 weeks to harvest means they can have a steady supply. Their workers can be cleaning the fruit and doing stuff. And every week a new batch comes in.
Yeah.
So where was I going on this? Uh, but anyway, that was, oh, the crunch thing. Yeah. So thought I was breeding for later and later ones, which I generally was, but I was also breeding for firmer berries that had crunch. And if you go in our breeding seedling now, crunch is now, instead of being one out of several hundred plants, it's one out of two have some kind of crunch to them.
Interesting. So you've really brought that trait out significantly.
Yeah, it's now commonplace in our advanced seedlings, but but a problem was it was always me doing it. Like when I first found crunch, I found something that was even crunchier, so I call it super crunch. Something
Nice.
like crunch, right? So I had all these adjectives of what kind of crunch something is on a certain year. And one of the last things I did for my program before retiring was actually buy a machine that can measure it and
Oh,
give them.
fascinating.
Yeah,
You got to
so
quantify the crunch.
that's right. Yeah, because I don't know if Super Crunch 4 years ago is that Super Crunch today? Is, is that
There's crunchflation.
that might be slight plus crunch. Actually, I helped co-write a grant with Professor Hasia from food science for whoever came after me. And it was to study more intensely using that crunch machine and also shelf life and nutrients in the plant. So uh, yeah, that was I think we'll get even firmer and firmer berries when they can use that machine, the firm
Yeah,
tech.
interesting. So is the Haskap breeding program continuing after your retirement?
Oh yeah, yeah. The my replacement though, he has a more traditional um, job description where he has to publish a lot of papers.
Mm,
Whereas I had industry development, so I was getting more credit for going out and talking to people and figuring out things for that. But because he has to publish papers, Haskap is a great crop to work on because no one, I think no one in the world has quite the collection of Haskap we do.
yeah.
Because I gathered it a whole bunch from Japan, uh, cooperators in Russia, but also we have the wild Canadian stuff. So I imagine he's going to be doing more of a scientific look at it,
Yeah.
but uh, Haskap royalties have been funding at least half the program.
Oh, that's great.
So yeah, half our employees get there because people buy our plants.
Nice. And what are some of your favorite cultivars that you've developed, or just in general?
Well, the I should say the world famous right now is Aurora, which
I believe I have that in my garden.
yeah, that was the first really commercial variety I released. Um, named after my daughter, by the way, Aurora
Nice.
Alice Aurora Alice Boers, so play on Borealis. But
That's great.
I was gonna name my first variety Aurora, but a blueberry came out like a month before the naming of the. So I named the first variety Borealis. But anyway, so Aurora at an international conference in Poland, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago, people were talking varieties, and uh, Aurora was bred. I knew it had half the acidity of other varieties. So that means it tastes twice as sweet, but it isn't. It's
Hmm.
just a illusion if you don't have as much sour.
Yeah.
But growers all over Europe that attended that conference said Aurora was the best one and it was the most firm of all the varieties. And I hadn't even thought of that.
Yeah.
like, like I knew it would had acceptable firmness to me, but they said a lot of the Russian varieties were falling apart just going from in the truck from the field to the cooler or something.
Yeah.
Over the years, but Aurora's kind of early, like first week in July, and it has good sized berries. It tastes good. Um, but then I would say like Boreal Beast is probably the next best one for a week or so after Aurora. Uh, it's actually half related to Aurora anyway, half sibling. But Beast is also grows fast compared to other varieties. Um, yeah, and then Boreal Beauty is the last to ripen, and it has a big fat berry. Uh, those are the three I would say are more commercial. Boreal Bliss is brand new. I just released it last year, and it's half Canadian. Uh, but it
Interesting.
also it
Like
has it just
genetically half Canadian from wild
yeah,
stock?
yeah. I used bulk pollen. Like I didn't know it at the time that it was diploid. but sometimes diploid plants have unreduced pollen that can unite. And all the plants from breeding the wild Velosa with Japanese Haskap, all of those wound up being 4 sets of chromosomes.
Huh.
So, so it must have been unreduced pollen that created them.
That is fascinating.
Yeah, and the Canadian or well, I have never gathered it from the U.S., so I have to say Canadian stuff. Um, all the wild Canadian stuff I've tasted has either been boring or great. Like from that, I didn't find a single bitter wild Canadian one like you find in Asia or Europe.
Yeah.
In fact, if in Norway, their version of wild Haskap tastes extremely bitter, and many people thought it was poisonous because it tastes so bad.
Yeah.
But it isn't poisonous. It's just all those antioxidants too concentrated. But yeah, where was I going on this? I forgot. But oh, the better varieties. So um, yeah, so Boreal Bliss is brand new, but we don't know. We know it blooms kind of late.
Hmm.
Uh, it was the best of all the half wild ones, like very productive. Um, so that's one to think about.
Yeah.
But the male parent uh, was bulk pollen from Nova Scotia pollen.
Oh, fascinating.
Nova Scotia is the warmest place in Canada for a wild Haskap. So it might have better adaptation for being farther south, but it has a better, when I say a better flavor, only a gourmet geek into flavor of Haskap would notice, maybe.
Yeah.
No, it's like, yeah, this is great, but the average person would probably say, oh, this is good. No.
Yeah. It's a subtle difference between
Yeah,
all the good ones.
like our cherries, sour cherries that I bred. Every chef picked the same one as the Romeo as the best tasting. And this is maybe 4 chefs over the years. But average people, they don't hold that into their memory that, you know, which one is the best. But
Yeah.
so
So
anyway,
you also bred the romance series bush cherries?
well, I selected them and named them.
Oh,
I say
fascinating.
I'm the god, I say I'm the godfather of them because they already existed, but no one knew what to do with them, or there was a field I had to pick which ones were the best. And yeah, I get there's also one other Haskap boreal blizzard, which is the largest berry, but because it's so heavy, it tends to fall off. Some of it fall off early.
Mm, comes at a
But
price.
that came about because some other breeding program released a variety they called Happy Giant, and a farmer got on called me up for advice on how to grow his Happy Giants, which was highly irritating because that's not my variety. And and I look up the stats on Happy Giant, and it is below average of all my seedlings that I'm considering to be a variety. So I said, well, I went searching, what is my biggest good tasting berry? And the biggest good tasting berry was one that crept around on the ground. So I couldn't do that one. There's another big one that didn't taste good, but Blizzard tastes great and was big and was almost more than twice as big as Happy Giant.
Wow.
So, uh,
So it's a huge berry.
so I decided, well, I'm going to release this thing if people want big berries. But if you had a business where you're hand picking your berries, that would be the one to do because every berry is bigger. Like,
Yeah.
uh,
Great. Well, that's good information because I think most of my listeners are probably either very small scale farmers or mostly gardeners. So having something that um, is particularly good for hand harvest rather than machine harvest is that's great information.
yeah. But also, boreal beast has the longest overlap with all the other varieties. So, and the berries tend to hold on. So, it, a long overlap means it could be, it's almost like the universal pollen
Nice.
plant. But the fruit is also very good. So, uh, but it's named beast just because the berries do look a little lumpy and the plant is bigger. So, whereas boreal beauty, she's a little shorter, but her berries are very smooth and kind of heart shaped. So they actually do look prettier than the other varieties.
Well, I am basically out of questions about Haskaps, but now that I know that you were involved in the Romance Bush Cherry program, I'd be curious if you'd like to just summarize what that breeding program was all about and what those bush cherries are like.
Okay, well, there was a breeder in Saskatchewan who's Les Kerr, who was breeding what we call Mongolian cherries, which are a very short version of a sour cherry. People call it another species, but it easily cross pollinates with large trees. So anyway, Les Kerr for several generations bred these to be more hardy. And then here, one of my predecessors got pollen or plants from Northern European type sour cherries, and they were hybridized with the Les Kerr hybrids. And so most of them at the university, they want to get 7 or 8 feet tall. They could get taller than that, but they're bushes on their own roots. And they're they're actually sweeter than most other sour cherries. Uh, Maybe slightly smaller fruit size, but because you can grow them differently. You can grow them as a hedge, and the same plants or same harvesting equipment we use for Saskatoon berries and Haskap. We can use that same harvester on most of our sour cherries if they're pruned properly.
Cool.
Uh,
That's a great efficiency of having one machine that'll do several different crops.
yeah, that's what I think. And I could tell you my story of sour cherries, where I was only a professor for 2 years and went to an international conference on cherries. And I was in shock. They put me as the first speaker after the keynote speaker. Right? Like, holy shit, why are they doing this? So I had gone with the idea I'll report my sour cherries and they'll tell me what I'm doing wrong.
Yeah.
Because the technician, he knew a little bit, but not that much. I didn't know much about sour cherries. So later on, I discovered I bought this book they said was the textbook for cherry researchers. And it shows in the middle of the map for North America, you cannot grow sour cherries or any cherries in Saskatchewan and also any state or province that touches it. So when they saw my application, I was really coming from the center of the dead point of where you should not grow sour cherries in North America.
Yeah.
So, so
Why
there I am.
why would they say that?
Well, no one had ever done anything that, like the zone rating maps and stuff.
Yeah.
Michigan, they grow the sour cherries around Lake Michigan,
Yep.
so they don't get frost damaged as easily.
Mm.
But anyway, so I get up there And every I was giving French accents to all these European names of sour cherries, not realizing they were German. But there was a little old lady German. She must have been in her mid 70s or something. She kept blurting out the correct pronunciation on me, right? So I get up there and I say our sour cherries are, this tall, and the cherries are this big and they're this sweet and this sour and stuff. And except for that one lady, no one criticized anything. Like I thought they would say, why are you bothering with such small cherries or something? Right. So the next guy up after me was from Finland, and he started his talk saying, our cherries aren't as big and sweet as Saskatchewan cherries, but we love them anyway. And I was like, what? And the guy next to me, he says, I'm a physiologist from Hungary, so I'm going to tell you what your fellow breeders won't tell you. He says, your stuff is probably going to be the most exciting thing at this conference. He says, I'm sure all the breeders are extremely jealous that you have sour cherries like that. Well, also our sour cherries don't fall off at a certain time. Like you have 3 weeks to pick them.
Yeah.
Plus the birds get them, right? So a lot of the other presentations were on which 3 days you have to pick your cherries or something. So yeah, so I realized we were actually leaders in sour cherry breeding, but didn't know it because
Fascinating.
because part of it was trying to breed something that survives Saskatchewan meant the reliance on the Mongolian version of the sour cherry, which was a small bush. So we wound up getting a medium-sized bush by hybridizing the two,
Yeah.
which is the perfect size for most of the berry harvesters.
Nice.
So yeah, so it was like that's when I decided at first I probably spent my first 7 years emphasizing cherry research, but 3 or 4 years into that, I started gathering Haskap, like as the next big thing to work on, which is building the collection.
Cool. Well, it seems like you've had a very fruitful career.
Yeah, it's been fun. When I was in grad school, I used to read these books by Luther Burbank.
Oh yeah,
And
classic.
yeah, and I was like, oh, it must have been so much fun in his era to take these crops from obscurity and turn them into something. And I felt like with Haskap and to a degree the cherries too, it was like something I could be different and
Yeah.
a pioneer.
Yeah, well, I have several of your plants in my garden here thousands of miles in a different country away. So, I appreciate your breeding work and it seems to have spread far and wide.
Yeah, I was amazed because I thought I would live this a quiet life as a monk breeding plants. I, see, I used to be a hotel manager, and then I got held up. This is in downtown Washington, and then I got held up at gunpoint a couple times, and some people got shot by some hotel people, not at my place, but anyway, I decided I'm going to go back to school and finish my horticulture degree.
Yeah,
And
fair enough.
I really was sick of people,
Yeah,
not just
plants are much friendlier.
yeah, not just the violent, but also the tourists. Like most tourists are fine, but you get the occasional one that, like the lady who wanted all her money back because there was a fly in her room, or
Yeah.
somebody threw stuff at me because we didn't have hash browns and it was on the menu, but it wasn't in the restaurant. And he threw his keys at me when he checked out. But anyway, I wanted to live a quiet life, but then I found out you can't be a breeder of something that nobody knows about.
You got to do some
You
PR
gotta,
too.
yeah, you do PR and teach them.
Yeah.
Like well, we used to ask people, me and my technician, Linda Matthews, we would ask people, how many people have tried a sour cherry? And like one or two people out of the audience would raise their hand and say, so no one here has had cherry pies? No one's had cherry jam? That all that is made with sour cherries.
Yeah, yeah.
So people just didn't even know that they had been eating sour cherries.
Yeah, and that it's a whole different species than sweet cherry.
Yeah, I think people at the university that were not fruit, the grain people, thought that there was only one kind of cherry, and it was the sweet cherries.
Mm.
Our sour cherries were so small and probably not worth it, but they were wrong.
Yeah. No, I actually prefer sour cherries. They're much more flavorful in my opinion.
Yeah,
What quick cherry question. Do you have brown rot in Saskatchewan? Is that like
yes.
a factor? Because that's
That's
the bane of growing prunus in Maine is brown rot.
and our first variety, Carmen Jewel, is the most susceptible of all our varieties
Mm.
for that.
What is there one that's the most resistant?
The other ones don't seem to get it, but that's in our location. I'm sure
Yeah, it's
it's
probably very
more
variable.
like you're in Maine, so it's going to be more humid there probably.
Yeah.
So uh, there's also leaf spot, which is in other areas, and I've been told they found black knot on them in Ontario or Quebec. I've never seen it here.
Interesting. Yeah,
And
I've never gotten black knot on bush cherries.
yeah, I haven't seen it. But we see it all the time on choke cherries here.
Yeah. Well, I think we're drawing to the end here. Is there anything that I should have asked about Haskaps but didn't?
Oh, probably. I, they're really fun to work with and using all sorts of anything you can do with berries. And they also, I just saw on the news this morning, more companies are trying to get rid of all artificial dyes.
Yeah.
Well, Haskap is intense, one of the most intense color juices.
Yeah, it
Like,
really turns everything a beautiful dark purple.
well, actually, it changes color according to pH.
Oh, interesting, like a purple
Like,
cabbage.
yeah, like when it's acidic, it can be deep red, kind of pink. But then if it gets a little more towards neutral, it can be purple. If it goes more alkaline, it can turn green.
Really?
And I've one year we had we have clay soil at the university, and we had so much rain. We had like 2 weeks we couldn't go out in the field. So I just took Hascap and in the teaching kitchen, and we just mixed it with a lot of things to see what would happen. So like it goes really good with like soy milk and rice milk.
Huh. Interesting.
I hate soy milk. My brother loves it, but when I put like 20% Hascap juice, it turned this beautiful bright orange or bright pink, and tasted great. Uh,
Cool.
when you add it to rice milk, it kind of looks like blood. It tastes good, but you don't want to add it to real milk because it'll make real milk curdle.
Yeah, too acidic maybe.
And then with juices, like if you mix it with apple juice or grape juice, the Hascap flavor comes through. But with the citrus juices, it just hides the Hascap flavor.
Yeah.
But I also mixed it in with cup with batter,
Hmm.
like for cake batter,
Yeah.
right? And then I experimented with giving them uh, basic cake batter would make it like a purplish cake. But if you add lemon juice, it'll be more red. But if you add extra baking soda, I had some that was green cupcakes.
That is
And
really fascinating. I'm gonna have to try that next spring.
yeah, and also with I put it in icing. And when I put it in icing and added a little uh, baking soda, it caused it to turn blue, but it puffed up. Like it felt almost like it was whipped cream because
Wow.
all the bubbles were stuck inside, or it was making bubbles as the
Yeah.
Haskap.
That's
So that was
super cool.
yeah,
It's really got some culinary experimentation properties that I had never even considered.
yeah. I even stained wood with it, but it came out this bright pink.
Interesting.
I,
And
I didn't try altering it with to change the pH before putting it on, but yeah, so
and that
that
highly colored juice, that's probably the antioxidants in there. Are those anthocyanins maybe?
anthocyanins, yeah,
Yeah.
and yeah, so it has potential as a food dye. For one thing, we used to give ice cream to visiting high school kids or elementary kids when they visit the College of Agriculture, because the ice cream would have been from animal science, cows,
Yep.
fruit from the fruit program, so that's plant science, and then it was processed food, so food science. And I gave them a bunch of Haskap to turn into ice cream, but they cheated me. They only used half, right? And I got this beautiful pink ice cream back that didn't taste like Haskap.
Hmm.
So part of that
Gotta
research
go
I did in
heavier.
yeah, I researched how much Haskap has to be in something for it to taste like Haskap. And so a lot of dairy, you need like 15, 20% Haskap, and it'll
Nice.
taste like, but the ice cream they sent me tasted like vanilla.
Yeah.
And then later on, I found out they were using more of the berries for their own stuff. And they figured that was enough when it turned pink. But
Cool. Well, I guess that's as good a spot as any to wrap it up. And if people want to follow your work or the work of the University of Saskatchewan, is there a good place for people to look for that information?
oh, that's a good thing to bring up. Since I retired, they decided to reorganize the website and they took down all my articles.
Oh,
And
bummer.
they want me to go through them and repost the ones that should be up there. But you'd have to read them right now, you'd have to do that. There's some website you can go to look up old websites.
Yep, archive.org.
Yeah, but the basic website was fruit.usask.ca.
Cool.
But they
I,
took it all. Yeah, they repurposed it. Now it's all the links aren't going to work that people used to have. But oh
I'll
well.
see if I can make that work using archive.org and put a link in the show notes to the old website so people can find your old articles.
Yeah, I think I had like 50 articles on that website, and that might be a winter project for me.
Yeah.
I'm also thinking of doing a YouTube series
Oh, I would very much encourage you to do that.
because I
You got a lot of great
like
information.
I had been doing this Haskap school every year, which I did last year, even though I was retired. But it includes 5 hours of lectures.
Wow.
But I'm thinking I would break them down into 15 minutes and and have put it on YouTube. I got to figure out how to do it.
Cool. Well, if you do that, please drop me an email and I will um, help promote it.
Okay, good.
Well, thank you so much. That was a fascinating interview, and thrilled to know more about Haskaps and little bonus of bush cherry information in there as well.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
thanks for doing the good work and sharing your information.
Okay. Well, thanks for having me on.
Anytime. Have a good evening.
Okay. Bye.
Bye. Next up, here's a question from a listener in central Massachusetts.
Hello, I have a question about bees. I am bee curious, but I think they're probably too much work and time investment, but I don't know. Like, what does it take to raise honeybees in New England? Like, what do you do over the winter? Is it like, what kind of infrastructure do you need? Is it useful, like, for for us and for the greater climate to raise these, I guess, domestic honeybees, if you could call them that? What are your thoughts? Thanks. Bye.
Good question, listener. I guess the short answer is keeping bees probably is too much work and time. Um, it's it's a lot. They are kind of finicky livestock, and they are much harder to keep than they were even like 25 or 30 years ago due to growth of new pests and diseases in their populations. Um, so if you're like, well, is this worth it? Do I maybe want to try this out? Maybe don't. But if it's something you're excited about, then maybe give it a try. As far as what does it take, there's some kind of basic personal safety equipment that you'll almost certainly want: a veil and a smoker. You don't necessarily need a bee suit. And I think one of the important goals to get to as a beekeeper is to be comfortable working bees without gloves on, because you really do need that dexterity. And once you're a little more familiar with working them, you can usually do it quite safely without gloves. So there's that personal safety stuff, and then there's you need some sort of a hive for the bees to live in. There's two basic styles: the Langstroth hives, which tend to be more expensive and have more infrastructure, but produce more honey, and then top bar hives, which some people are really excited about, and they're much easier to DIY. You can get away with less extraction equipment because you're harvesting whole combs. You tend to get more wax because you're harvesting those combs rather than reusing them. And there's some potential lessening of pest and disease issues because the bees are making comb that is the size that they naturally want to make, rather than giving them sort of an artificial starter sheet. I don't know where the science is at on that, but it seems intriguing, and definitely look into it if you're considering starting with bees. Most regions have some sort of beekeepers association or something like that where you can take some intro classes on keeping bees, and that's definitely something that I would recommend before even considering starting up at all, because like I said, there's been a lot of development in new diseases and pests, and knowing kind of what the state-of-the-art management is and how much management bees need to get by in this region would be important knowledge before considering really getting into it. But I have kept bees multiple times. Each time I kept them, I was able to keep them for several years. But the last time our bees died out over the winter, I had a small child and we were building a house, and we're like, oh, we'll just put this on the back burner and get back to it when we're not so busy. And I have never not been busy since then. And I don't know that I will necessarily ever keep bees again, but it was really interesting and really fun. And so I'm not ruling it out. But it's definitely something that is only worth it if you are super excited about it. I guess the other half of the question is it useful for us, and is it useful for the greater environment? Useful for us? Certainly. It's great to have honey. Honey is a lovely sweetener. It's cool to be able to produce your own sweetener. I would say keeping bees is more work than making maple syrup. Maple syrup is like something you do around here usually in like February, and it's pretty time limited to a time when there's not a whole lot else going on. Whereas bees have a much longer season that matches up much more with the growing season for plants. So again, we're coming back to like, if you're stoked on keeping bees, then probably give it a try. And if not, maybe put your time and energy somewhere else. The question of is it good, like important for the greater climate, I think is pretty clear cut at this point. And domestic honeybees or feral honeybees even are not important for the environment in North America or Turtle Island. They do certainly pollinate plants, but they are, like invasive species, kind of disconnected from the ecosystem to a degree. Like, they just haven't been here long enough to have many other species really relying on them, or any other species really relying on them. And they do eat up a lot of pollen and nectar that native bees could be eating. And those native bees have more of the interconnections with other species in the environment. So totally not important conservation-wise to be keeping bees. Making sure that we are managing landscapes in a way that is conducive to the survival of native bees and other native pollinators, very ecologically important. So I think it's like good to draw a sort of bright line between honeybees that are livestock and we keep because they're an interesting animal interaction for us and give us honey, and managing landscape in such a way that there's good habitat for wild bees that pollinate ecologically important plants and serve many other ecological services and are like an integral part of the ecosystem around us. Hopefully that answers your question and gives you a couple other places to look for more information as you decide whether you want to keep bees or not.